So you're starting a podcast and you're wondering whether or not you need a video component for your podcast. You ever ask yourself that question? You're in the right place, because in this video, I'm going to give you my opinion on whether or not a podcast needs a video component. Let's get started. Well, you've seen them all over the place. Allegedly, they're called video podcast. But are they really video podcast? Let's talk about it. All right, well, first things first, let me get my unpopular opinion out of the way. There's no such thing as a video podcast. That's right. You either have a podcast or you've got a video show that lives on a platform like YouTube or IGTV or wherever you choose to have your content live. But there's no such thing as a video podcast. A podcast, by definition, is an audio file that's uploaded to the internet to be listened to. Never in that description do they mention one time that an audio file uploaded to the internet to be viewed and watched. You see the big difference there? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not just here to tell you that all of your grandioso plans of having a video podcast need to come crashing down right now, but rather focus on the task at hand. Friends, I'm here to tell you there is enough work in and of itself. Creating a podcast, launching a podcast, and then continuing to produce content consistently on an ongoing basis. When we take video and throw it in the mix, well, now we've got a video component that we've got to remain consistent with. I know what you're thinking, but Sebastian, there's already a video rolling while I'm recording my podcast. Doesn't that make it a video podcast? No. That makes it a podcast that's being recorded with video so that you can then take that video of the recording of your podcast, which is audio. You can utilize that for content on social media, for Instagram stories, Facebook content, Instagram content, LinkedIn content, whatever your little heart desires. But don't get it confused thinking my podcast needs to be recorded with audio and a video component so that I can take the audio and upload it to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere else, and I can take the video, I can cross my fingers and hope and pray that somebody actually watches it on YouTube. That, my friends, is not going to happen. Now, I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm just trying to help save you some time and really understand what's going on when it comes to video podcast, which don't even exist, by the way. Now, if you do decide that your video should, or your podcast rather, should have a video component to it, that's fine, but you need to make sure that the video fits within the YouTube algorithm. People go to YouTube for two reasons: to be entertained and to get their questions answered. If that content from within your podcast episode can do all of those things, then by all means, and you've got the resources, do not do this on your own. Do not do this on your own. But if you've got the resources where a videographer is filming your podcast, they're videoing your podcast being recorded, and they can take that video and they can edit it according to YouTube's algorithm and how YouTube actually works, so that when people go, it's a catchy headline, it's an attractive thumbnail, and it's an actual answer to their problem, an answer to their question, etc., etc. But let's not get confused. When you're starting a podcast, focus on one thing. Let's get 25 or 50 episodes underneath your belt, and then we can focus on bringing a videographer in to video the recording of your podcast and see if they can, in fact, turn it in to a piece of content specifically for YouTube. So we've got podcast content, YouTube content. Nowhere along the line do those two come together and it becomes a video podcast. So does your podcast need a video component? Maybe. And if you absolutely insist on having a video component for your podcast, make sure the video is being utilized to be chopped up into micro content for social media to help promote your podcast and also help you stay consistent with content for your social media. Well, I hope you're leaving this video knowing at least one or two things that you did not know on whether or not your podcast needs a video component. I know my opinion is extremely unpopular because Joe Rogan has a video podcast. Friends, I'm not Joe Rogan, you're not Joe Rogan, and chances are we never will be. But I just want to make sure you're focused on keeping the main thing, which is starting a podcast and continuing to be consistent with the podcast content you create. Questions about starting a podcast or anything pertaining to podcasting that you may have seen here on the channel or just curious about, please comment below. I do respond to each and every one of you lovely people. It is my distinct pleasure. Until next time, friends.